In this lesson, we'll take a look at how we can use shadow box to create geometry. So jumping back into ZBrush, let's start with this kind of star, which can be used as sort of a placeholder. We'll draw this onto the canvas and hit T to go to edit mode. Now under geometry, come down here to shadow box, the shadow box UI group, and you can see there's a button here and a couple of settings. We'll leave those as is for now and go ahead and just hit shadow box. Now what's going to happen is you're going to see three planes come up around the geometry. The geometry is going to change just a little bit, and you'll see some masking going on all three of those planes. So what's happening is shadow box is using the mask on the three planes and sort of the intersection of how that mask works to create the geometry sort of in the center here. So what we want to do is actually go and unmask everything, and then we can start to create our own. So for instance, I can come in here and say I want a part of it to kind of look like this, sort of a hook shape, maybe like a figure eight. And you can see here that we get the figure eight shape, but it is completely going from one side to the other. So we need to now define from this angle what it looks like here. So we can come down here and say, okay, I want it to be only that thick. So now it's creating that look, only that thick. Now it's a little bit chunky, and that is related to our resolution. So if we bump up our resolution, we can get a much sharper look. Okay, if we were to go ahead and kind of clear this out, and also clear this out, and then come in and remask that sort of figure eight pattern, you can see, you can see that the outline is much sharper. If I come in here and define the thickness, and we want it to extend past where that is, because it's using kind of the intersection of that to create those. Okay, and then if you wanted to, you could come in and also create an additional piece here. Now we can always add on to that. So if I come into the side and add something on there, or add something going in here, that's going to add that on and recalculate it. Okay, I can also come in here and say, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and add some thickness to this side. And you can see we can start to create some really interesting effects. We can come in here and maybe cut out portions. And I'm just using the regular mask rectangle, but you can use the other ones as well. So you can see we can start to cut things out like that. So you can start to get some really interesting, especially when you get into mechanical shapes, you can start to get some really interesting looks just by cutting out and using different kinds of masking to actually do that. So you know, we could come in here from the top and create a mask, and then maybe take out part of the mask coming in from the top, kind of move it over like that. And so really you can see, start to see the intersection of how all those masks sort of work together to create that geometry. Okay, now once we're done, you can go ahead and turn off shadow box, and then you just have a piece of high resolution geometry. If you take a look at your polyframe, you can see it's a very dense mesh here. But there are ways you can rebuild this to get something lower if you need to. But it's a great way to create these sort of complex pieces using just masking. So again, come back here if you want to do it over. Go back to shadow box. We can maybe take this up one, do shadow box, kind of unmask everything, and then maybe if we want to create kind of a bolt, we could come in here and let's choose a mask circle. And for our mask circle, we'll go into our stroke, and want it actually to be the circle stroke. So there we have the stroke, and we want to actually draw it out from the center, and then we also want it to maintain that circular shape. We don't want to be able to create an oval shape. So we'll turn on square and center. And then we'll come in here. I can use spacebar to move it around. And we can create a nice disc here. Okay, for the thickness, we can come back in with our mask pen, and dragging outside, this will give us the rectangular marquee, and we can create the thickness of it. So if we want it to be a little bit thicker, and remember that it's using the combination of that, so even though I've extended that mask out beyond, it's only taking into account the sort of the intersection between this projection and this projection, and figuring out what that actually looks like. Okay. So then if we wanted to create kind of maybe a screw head, we could come in here and take a negative mask out of the front and kind of create something like that. Okay. We could also come in here and start to start to mask off the areas up here. If we wanted to make it a little bit more interesting, add a little bit more detail, we could start to do that down here as well. Come in here, knock off the top and the bottom, and you can start to create your own kind of custom piece here. Once you're done, you just turn off shadow box, and now we've got our mesh. Okay, now there's also, and we'll talk about these later, I just want to kind of sprinkle them in as we go, but the clipping brushes are great to manipulate some hard surfaces like this. So if something's not completely sharp or as sharp as you want it, or for instance you can see that this isn't completely smooth around the edges. So what we can do is hold Control Shift, and we can use a clip circle. And what that will do is smash everything down to whatever we have defined. So I can bring out this clipping circle, and I just want to bring it right out to the edges. I'll kind of move it around, and then release. And you can see that clips everything down, smashes all those polygons down to align with that particular circle. So we've created something that's very, very smooth. Okay, if we wanted to kind of flatten off the back, we could use the clip rectangle. Just make sure everything's inside of it, and just put the edge of that rectangle where we want to flatten it, and that'll flatten that right down. Okay, and if you wanted to flatten the front, you could do the same thing. Okay, so creating a simple bolt, play around with the shadow box and the masking and how those interact with one another to get some of your own custom results for that. Okay, and see how that is able to interact with one another. So the next thing that we want to look at, now that we've taken a look at shadow box, is another method of mesh creation. And it's really a great way to work up concepts and really work in a very flexible way, and that is using Dynamesh. So we'll talk about Dynamesh in the next lesson.